everybody, it's Rory from A&S Gear, and we're going to look at a electronic upgrade for your 98 Custom. So this right here is the 98 Custom ACT E-Grip kit. Now there's two different kits. There's a non-ACT version and there's an ACT version. So you want to make sure that you know what version 98 Custom you have, whether it is the ACT, the anti-chop technology version, or it is not. You want to make sure you pick up the correct kit for that, because the hammer or striker, whatever you want to call it, that is provided in those kits is different depending on what version you have. Some will have the cut if you have the ACT version. If you don't, it won't have a cut. So make sure you're getting the right one, first off. Second off, this is not the easiest install of an electronic board that there ever was. It does require a little bit of hammering, does require a little bit of finesse. It is not just open the grips up, drop a board in, put the grips back on, all done. It isn't like that. It does take a little bit more. So give yourself the time to do it properly. Make sure that you are following the instructions as closely as you can. It does give you great step-by-step instructions on how to do it and the things you're going to need to do it properly. Just definitely take the time to do it. So we're going to go over a couple of the pieces. I'm not going to do an install here. Maybe we can do that in a different video. But just the pieces that do come with it and where they're going to go. So first off, always make sure that your marker's degassed. There's no paintballs in it, nothing that could potentially hurt you. And then you're going to need to open it up. So for this particular one, you do need to do something to the grips. There's no hole in the grips to access the board. So once you get the grips off, you'll actually see that there are two little spots where you can take an X-Acto knife and cut a piece of the rubber off, and that will leave you with a passageway or a hole that lets you get to the button that is on the board. So that is actually there and meant to be cut off. It's not just an arbitrary place where you're going to just start hacking away at it. You can see where it needs to be cut. Then underneath this as well, there's a metal plate that is part of the grip that needs to be knocked out. So you have to get a punch or a screwdriver and a hammer, and you're going to knock that piece out. Now, all of that information is in the manual. So if you follow the manual, it tells you exactly what to do. You don't just need to guess and hope you're doing it the right way. It tells you exactly how to do it. So definitely follow that along. Once you get those couple pieces taken care of, then it's going to come down to just dropping the pieces into, excuse me, into the certain sections and replacing parts that you need to. So this is your board and your solenoid right here. This is your micro switch, which the trigger is going to ride against. There are a couple modifications that you need to make to your trigger as well, but again, those are in the manual, so you just follow along. You're going to remove the C-clip off the back of the trigger, the spring that's inside there, because you don't need those pieces in it anymore. Now that you're actually working with a micro switch, you're not pulling the trigger back against the Sear mechanism and making it work. It's doing it all for you. So follow along with the trigger, follow along with the manual, follow along with everything. Your power cable is going to plug in there. This is going to go to a 9-volt battery. Your capacitor, this is what stores the energy to provide power to the solenoid to activate and make the mechanism work on the inside. Your hammer, we talked about this. This is a replacement hammer for the one that's in there. Now, if you're putting this into a brand new ACT, then you probably don't need to switch this out. They provide this just in case you've been running a non-electric ACT or non-ACT version for a long time, and the hammer or striker has started to wear. Running it fast with the electronics, it can start to slip because you've created some wear on the places where the sear needs to grab underneath there like that. And if it's got to that point and it starts to slip, you'll need a new hammer. So they just provide you with a new one. If it's brand new, don't worry about it. If it's not brand new, definitely switch it out. So this is a new sear right here. This is the new sear for the electronic version. You cannot use the original sear that's in there for the electronics. You need to switch it out for the electronic sear version. New Sear Spring, and then there's two different posts right here, two different lengths. So depending on what you're putting it into and what model frame you have, will determine what length pin you need. It's a pretty simple setup. Oh, this piece right here. This is a magnet. You can see it's got a little green thing on there so that you can realize that it is a part that you need to put in there. And if it ever attaches to something, you can easily separate it off of there. But the way that works is this actually sits down at the bottom, kind of like this. So the board's going to be in here. The solenoid, I think this actually goes this way. This comes up to the top. So this goes where your trigger is up here. This is at the bottom down here. We gotta set it up like this so you can see it. The capacitor plugs in, and I believe it sits right over here. You've got your sear that sits up at the top like this. Your hammer is gonna sit above that, and this is all kind of set up inside here. Like this. This is going to go to your battery, which is going to sit right on top of it. This magnet is going to be underneath the solenoid right here, and this helps the solenoid retract every time. So when it fires, you pull the trigger, it energizes and it goes forward like that. So it closes down. Now sometimes it won't want to retract back off. When it turns off and the energy stops and there's nothing flowing through it anymore, this magnet helps pull it back down so that when you pull the trigger, it can fire up again. Without the magnet in there, I've seen guns that won't fire. You just hear them go click, 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 but nothing's happening because that actually this piece right here gets stuck up and it doesn't return back. So the magnet is very important to help return that armature backwards. And then the pin sits, oh, I just stuck to it. The pin sits right on top of the solenoid like this, so that when it fires forward, it moves the pin forward. Now the pin comes up and it hits against the bottom of the sear, moving the sear out of the way, which releases the hammer, and the hammer slides forward and strikes the valve. So that's how that works. Every time you pull the trigger, solenoid activates, moves the pin up, pin hits the sear, sear drops out of the way, hammer slides forward because of the spring pressure behind it, strikes the valve, valve opens, shoots the ball out. Whole cycle starts over again. So that's the most basic way I can explain that really quick without actually getting in there and doing it. But it is very important that you are picking the proper electronic grip kit for your gun. Whether you have the ACT version or not, you need to determine that which one you have before you pick up the system. So if you want to go faster, you want to make it easier to shoot, you want to make it a simpler, I don't want to call it design, but just a simpler way to get more performance out of your gun, then definitely pick up one of these kits and throw it in. I just can't stress, take the time to do it properly and follow the manual, and you'll get a gun with just a very simple upgrade, not simple to install, but simple in its idea. They can really make your gun perform much, much better than it did before. So definitely check it out. The electronic grip frames for your 98 Custom or 98 Custom ACT, they're available through the website. Order yours now through ansgear.com.